What is going on? Welcome back to Jiu-Jitsu Outlet. I'm sitting down with the Korean executioner, Michael Yim, a Jiu-Jitsu purple belt, a school teacher. Man, it's good to have you on the show. Welcome, brother.
Thank you, Paul. It's honestly a huge honor to be on the show. I really like what this podcast stands for. I really like that you're trying to get the voice, not just from huge names, but also people within the community. It's awesome. I love the idea. I love the intention of the show. And I'm really excited to talk about how jiu-jitsu relates to mental health.
Dude, well, thank you. I appreciate you. And I know that we were talking briefly before the show about how jiu-jitsu is kind of like a really big fraternity. And you mentioned that you actually have done a lot of thinking about this. And we talk about this on the show a lot. So I'm really excited to get your thoughts on this. And I know that you want to talk about your experience as a school teacher. So we're going to get to that on this episode. But first, I want to ask you the same question that we ask everyone else to start the show off, which is just, how has your time training jiu-jitsu helped your mental health?
All right. So, Paul, the question is, how deep do you want me to go here?
Let's go deep.
All right. Let's go all the way through. So I feel like the only way that I can properly answer this question is just go from the very beginning. Where did my martial arts journey start? And it's absolutely fucking ridiculous. So, basically, I was born. My parents were immigrants from South Korea. They came here in like the 1970s. I was born in the 90s, right? I was a 90s kid. I was living in New Jersey, and I just dealt with a lot of bullies, a lot of racism. I dealt with a lot of shit because I have an older brother that has autism, so I had to deal with a lot of like backlash and things like that. So that really gave me a hard time in my start, and I had a lot of issues with my self-confidence. I had a lot of issues with motivation, right? And I didn't really have any sense of purpose or any sort of identity. And it was honestly a pretty tough time in my life, especially like in middle school and high school, to try to figure out who I was. I had a buddy, and he invited me to his house one day, and we were actually watching UFC and The Ultimate Fighter. And he goes, "Yo, this shit's awesome," right? What do you call it? We should like train, become fighters. So we it's actually hilarious. We went online, we ordered MMA gloves, right? And dude, we were like 12, 13 years old, right? I'm 31 now. And we would just go in the backyard and we would scrap and we'd pretend to do moves. We loved Chuck Liddell, Brock Lesnar, right? Like the old school guys, right? And we were like, yeah, we want to do that stuff. So, he was a pretty bad influence on me. He would schedule fights for me. All right, I want you to fight this kid at the park here. And I think that that'd be good for you because you should have experience to learn how to fight. Right. First off, that's a terrible way to introduce anybody to a fight, scheduling a fight at a park with a person. I don't even have a problem with the guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I thought that was pretty awesome. So where does this all tie in? So we used to actually pay $20 or $30, and we used to actually pay this one kid we knew that was going to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu school down the street. He was a white belt too. They teach us arm bars and kimuras and Americanas, and they're all wrong. You mean all the technique pretty much sucked. But we were so fascinated by the sport, but I don't think we're really trying to just dive in. We were 12 and 13 years old, and I don't feel like there was a platform like there is now for kids to get into things like MMA and jiu-jitsu. It wasn't as mainstream yet. No one really knew what the UFC was and MMA was at the time, at least not to the grand scale of what it is now.
Right.
We thought there was this cool underground thing and we wanted to do it ourselves. And my buddy pitched this idea. He goes, "Yo, what if we join the wrestling team so we can learn some takedowns?"
Smart.
That'd be cool. Right. So right. It's a good idea. He's like, "But fuck wrestling because it sucks and it would never help you in a real fight." So I said, "Okay,
of course.
let's try that." Of course, wrestling being literally probably one of the best forms of combat.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So I ended up joining the team. I absolutely loved it. I loved the discipline. I loved the rigor to it. I loved the whole environment of it. And I fell in love with high school wrestling, and that's where I met some of the most influential people in my life, and it helped pretty much guide the course of my entire life, which was to become a teacher, right? To become a martial artist and to stay disciplined and be on course with not just how I am, my mental health, my confidence, but with my academics.
Right.
Well, I met Coach Lodato. Shout out to him. He's like probably one of the biggest influential figures in my life. He was my high school wrestling coach. But I ended up staying with wrestling. That kid ended up actually quitting like we originally planned, and we just stopped being friends after that. I just joined the wrestling team, and I know it's just a big change in just the way I carry myself. Like my motivation to do well in school was just there because now I had motivation, because if I didn't do well, I couldn't wrestle. Right. I had motivation to stay in shape. Before that, I was like a 4'0" goblin, just fat and loser. And I got into shape because of wrestling. I went from I lost 30 pounds or something like that when I joined the team.
That's awesome.
And then it gave me an identity. I was more confident, even just talking to chicks. You know what I mean? I had something to say now. I wasn't I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna throw on Halo. You know what I mean? I was able to talk to girls, and it helped me a lot just overall with my own psyche,
Yeah.
So I would say for sure that was where it really started. About how jiu-jitsu helped me with my mental health, even though I wasn't even really doing jiu-jitsu yet. I sort of was doing jiu-jitsu, but just not really jiu-jitsu. I was just fighting in the backyard and doing that. And it eventually led me to something really positive.
Right. That's really interesting. It's crazy how at first you think man, this is a sketchy story, but then as it goes on, it's oh no, this, if not for those early scraps, you might not have been called to wrestling. You might not have gotten into it because you might have just not been, you might not have seen the value, but it almost seems like you went through some fire early on because of a sketchy friend in a sort of way. But then it's that is what then propelled you to then start wrestling, which led to jiu-jitsu, which led you to become a teacher. And it's amazing how these things worked for us, So I'd love to hear about that. And can you just talk a little bit more about how has the martial arts helped you in your life off the mats? Specifically, what about all this made you want to become a teacher and help kids?
So I'm really happy about how this whole sort of ties together. So I feel like I just went into something really positive, and now I gotta sort of trickle this down, right? I lost in districts, sucks, my senior year. I didn't go to regions. I was really bummed out. My coach was like, yeah, you can wrestle in college, whatever. So I went to Montclair State University. It's a state college in New Jersey. And from what I read in the brochure, what I read online, was that they had a wrestling club. It's okay, that'll suffice. You know what I mean? I'll join the wrestling club when I go to college, and I'll figure that out from there, right? And I got there. It turns out the wrestling club lost their charter, so I had nothing to do. I was kind of shit out of luck. So instead of going and trying a jiu-jitsu school or trying kickboxing or whatever that might be, or finding a wrestling club within the area, I decided to pledge a frat. So that's where my life, there was a lot of positives. I'm not talking smack about fraternities and stuff, because I was president of a national fraternity. I was, really involved, and we did really good things for the community. But I feel like taking away that martial artist part of me really made me spiral out of control, because I really got into partying. Yeah, and that was probably the worst I was mentally, physically. I got into the worst shape of my life, right? I was just living a pretty unhealthy lifestyle, which I don't think I really need to go into that much detail about. I just really got into partying. And then I graduated, right? Luckily I did, I actually made it to class and actually got it going once I realized I hit rock bottom. I almost got a DUI. And that was pretty much where my father gave me an ultimatum, Mike, you got to turn this around or you're going to be a failure. And that's where I really stepped my stuff up, and I graduated, and eventually I got a job. I started to work as a teacher, and then that was the now what? I have a career, I have a job, but why am I still not happy? You know what I'm saying? For some reason, something was missing in my life, and I didn't know what it was. So I went on my phone, I typed in MMA on Google Maps. I looked at a couple of reviews. I walked down the street, and there was an MMA school, and then that's where it all began. I was training at a school called Rare Breed MMA in Bloomfield, and I was there for a couple years. how it really helped me off the mat, just moving forward after years of training, competing, winning, losing, all that, right? I realized that within all this whole thing, I have a skill. I'm able to communicate information. I'm able to transfer that information to people. I'm able to transfer it to children, and half those kids don't even want to fucking be there. You know what I mean? And I'm able to introduce that and make it, interactive and fun, and find ways to get people involved. Even the kids that very first day, I don't want to be here, and then you see them come in and they're excited to be there because they have something to look forward to that day. You're planning some big project or something. And I'm like, you know what? This is a skill that I should be able to put into jiu-jitsu. I'm a teacher. I communicate. I'm a leader, not just to my peers, but leader to children, leader to the community. I should really get this going. So I ended up getting a job, and I was coaching. I'm still am actually. I'm about to go actually later today. I'm coaching the kids program at UFC gym, and just this year I started the Immortals Juniors program. Me and Michael Rakshan, my coach and business partner, we started up a new kids program in Clifton, New Jersey, and the one I had before that, which I was working for many years, is in East Rutherford. So literally in town where I am right now.
Man, that's awesome. So really it gave you a whole career. Like it gave you a purpose, and stuff like that is what it sounds like. And man, like what fraternity were you in? I'm curious.
Oh, I was in Theta Xi. I was in Theta Xi in the Gamma Mu chapter. And dude, we did an awesome job. And I feel like that overall the whole sense of fraternity taught me a lot about brotherhood. It taught me a lot about loyalty. It taught me a lot about like what good friends do, what brothers do, right? And I noticed a lot of the things that I learned from those concepts are things I noticed when I met other people within the sport, which I don't want to talk too far into, much into. I don't want to go into way too much detail, but there's some shifty people that you meet in jiu-jitsu, and you just have to keep an eye on for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And being in those environments in college can teach you how to spot those people a lot easier. And I was in a fraternity too. I was in Phi Kappa Psi for a couple of years, and similar sort of thing, right? Like the fraternity was really focused externally on community service and charity and portraying that image of, and I'm not to say the image was false, but like that was the outward image was philanthropy and charity and all this other stuff. But then internally, it was just drinking beer constantly, like just drinking.
So we have a lot in common here. That's what I'm basically getting out of this conversation.
Yeah, all the time, man. We would party constantly, like every day.
Yep. I lived in the house for 3 years.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
I lived in it for 1 year, and that was too much. Like 1 year would have me tapping out of that experience, but 3 years would be crazy, bro. That's so yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of similarities between what you learn on the jiu-jitsu mats and the community that forms with your team, especially if you're a competitor, and the stuff that happens in a fraternity. But it's a similar sort of energy, especially for men. But it's the jiu-jitsu is obviously so much healthier. And here's the thing. I don't know if your fraternity did the same thing, but we would actually spar and have matches with our fraternity. So we were grappling, and a lot of those guys were into grappling too. Like a lot of us would actually go, like I trained judo during college, and some of my guys, like we would go and train judo together. So like so they would train, and we would have what we would call Thunderdomes, where
we call it tap out. Yeah,
tap out. I love it. So I'm sure that every fraternity has a similar thing. And I guess what I'm getting at here is, when men all get together like that, I think there's something instinctive that says like, oh, we're supposed to be fighting each other. We're supposed to be training, not necessarily like battling each other like enemies, but we're supposed to be training for something. Like we're supposed to be, because I mean, if you think about a tribe growing up in the prehistoric age or something like that, all the men together would have to be constantly training just for survival. So I think that when men get together, there's something instinctively that says like, we're supposed to be training. We're supposed to be working on something. And whenever that's not happening, that energy has to get released somehow else, through partying, through drugs, through other shit, or through Thunderdomes, through tap outs. Like what you're saying, they even create it, even though they don't know that, like, even though obviously they're not martial artists, it still emerges because you get drunk enough and everyone says, hey, let's have a grappling contest. Let's see who can who, and shit like it's natural. But then on the jiu-jitsu mats, it's just, that's the agenda. We're here to train. And it's like, it just awakens that thing. And all of the guys are like, aha, Like, this is what we came here to do. This is what I've been visited. I'm supposed to be training for something, even though
Yeah. I know exactly that vibe you're talking about. Like that after training session, like after like you just knew that everyone just went balls to the walls crazy. We had a really good live training session, and everyone's just like, yeah, that's exactly what we needed. Like everyone's like happy after. I know exactly what you're talking about, man. And it's such a cool thing to share with a really special room. Like when you have a really good training session, right? You bow out the class, and everyone's like, yo, that was a rough practice. You know what I mean? Like that was legit. But
it's special. I'd love to hear more about that though, because I know before the interview you said you put a lot of thought into this about like, jiu-jitsu versus the fraternity. Like, could we do a little comparison almost? Like, I'd love to get some of your thoughts on that.
Sure. I mean, I didn't really write a lot about that. That was just mainly to talk about where my life started spiraling out of control. But let's talk more about the positives of fraternities, right? So I was a leader of the fraternity. I got into the executive board, I think my sophomore or junior year, and I was living in the fraternity house for a lot. And I think that the most important lessons that I learned from being in Theta Xi had mainly to do with just I think not just being liaison to like alumni or within the chapter or to nationals and all that. That's like part of the job. But I think understanding what loyalty really is and understanding, right, some of the principles of the do's and don'ts to your brothers is like the most important thing that you can learn. There's no book, there's no necessarily instruction manual about how to be a good like friend, how to be a good homie. You mean like there's no like thing for that. And there's things that you do and there's things that you don't, and you either learn from your mistake, learn from other people's mistakes, or you see people do things and you realize, all right, well, I should not associate with that because that's not how people should be.
Yeah, 100%, man.
What it taught me though, for sure, was time management. That would be like something that I would talk about like in recruitment, right? I'm sure Mike Rakshan will probably listen to this too. He's probably like, well, Mike is still terrible at sales, so it didn't really work on that, but it did help me with recruitment. I think that being able to talk to people and pretty much sell a product, right? Trying to get membership is you're pretty much selling a service or product here, right? And being able to pitch that and offer some sort of like lifelong membership and brotherhood is what you're trying to sell when you're doing recruitment. And I find myself having to draw upon that when I'm talking about membership options for, the jiu-jitsu school, membership options for kids that are being enrolled. So I have to talk to parents about that. As chapter president, I had to call, the freshman pledges parents to convince them to, start the associate membership process, pledging, So yeah. I had a lot of experience with that. And I feel like that was really useful to where I am today. Actually, really good piggyback where I'm at right now. So right now, I'm currently an associate and I'm really being helped out with the team at Eat Clean Bro. They're in Eatontown, New Jersey. They do basically meal prep. Not really meal prep. It's already made for you, but basically they produce meals that are really good for you, right? They're high in protein, right? They don't contain any crap in it. There's no it's lower in sodium. There's no preservatives in it, right? It's never been frozen, right? And it's really good food, right? And a lot of fighters, boxers, wrestlers, right? Football players, right? Are within this association, we work together, right? And they've helped me a lot, even financially. And I got this opportunity through one of my fraternity brothers. He was the vice president when I was president, my buddy Sean. So huge shout out to him for all of his support. Without him, I don't think making weight would have been possible. Without him, I don't feel like that I would be able to perform as efficiently in practice. So huge shout out to my guys at Eat Clean Bro. Check them out at eatcleanbro.com. Really cool opportunity I got from them.
I've thought about that company actually. I think if I'm local, I'd probably sign up. But dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, that opportunity came and I got to network at some of their events and I got to meet some people that are also in jiu-jitsu. So like it all sort of crossed over and it all kind of came full circle where jiu-jitsu is, the fraternity, right, connections I made there, the lifelong connections and the networking I made there is even helping me with my jiu-jitsu. I found other training partners I can work with. One of them being my buddy Dakota. Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. It's just kind of like what we were talking about before, where it's like you take this thing that may have seemed a bit negative at first, like the lifestyle that the fraternity was leading you to, but then ultimately it's like you took that energy and you were able to take it into something that actually literally helps your health, healthy food. And it's like it's how the energy moves, how these things change with us. It's almost like in the beginning you start off with something and it might not be as great, but then over time, it reaches its full potential, and you never know where that thing is going to go. You never know what's going to happen. Like when you start something, and these things that we look on in the past as mistakes or things that were maybe not as great for us in the future, we see it and we're like, wow, that's actually the whole reason why this connection even came to pass, is that I did this thing. That's crazy.
Sure. Going back to the question where you asked about like how it helped me off the mats. I gotta say, I started training at Immortals Jiu-Jitsu July 2021, and I've been training there ever since. My coach, Mike Rakshan, really does an awesome job, not just at teaching jiu-jitsu, but he's been really teaching me like overall the business side of how it works. I didn't really understand a lot of these things, but he's really good with sales, and he has a really strong business acumen. So like, I'm just learning a lot about things like that, and it really gave me good experience. It's giving me good experience as an entrepreneur, because now I'm selling merchandise. I have rash guards, I have shorts, right? I'm selling, merch. I have a service, right? I have 2 kids programs, kids jiu-jitsu, kids MMA, things of that nature. And for that, I have to advertise. So I'm working on my marketing. I'm working on graphic design. I'm working on UX. I'm even making my own advertisements, which was a learning curve at first. But, after a lot of experience and looking at tutorials, going into YouTube and studying, I kind of got the hang of it. So I'm developing a skill outside of jiu-jitsu that's helping, the business side of jiu-jitsu, which ultimately I'm going to want to have when I'm much older and I can't compete as much. Because right now I'm really into competing and coaching. But I'm going to get to that point where I'm going to be too old, right? Maybe I'll do Masters 5, whatever, But, and I'm going to be happy that I took this time to learn the business side, because there's a lot of people that are black belts in jiu-jitsu and they want to open up a school because that's their best skill. Their best skill that they have to offer, they can monetize on, is jiu-jitsu. But they don't have a business background in it. So their jiu-jitsu school is constantly, right, behind on rent. They're constantly struggling for membership, right? Because they never learned the skill of how to run a business. Mike's a business mastermind. Mike's an accountant. So Cool Rack himself has taught me a lot about just the overall business side, about how this whole thing works. And I'm still learning, I'm still learning a lot from a lot of our people around me about the do's and don'ts about what we should do. And I think it's interesting that people go into business because they have the skill, but they don't have an understanding about how to run the business. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm learning a lot.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I've been running a digital marketing agency since 2016. And I always think about the similarities between marketing and business and jiu-jitsu. Like there's so many different corollaries. And what I found is a lot of the guys who are higher level in jiu-jitsu tend to be more entrepreneurial, especially as they get into doing what you're talking about, where they're trying to do more privates or they're trying to open an academy. And dude, what you said is 100% correct. Like most of them have no business skills whatsoever. And if you're an athlete and you can start to develop some of that stuff, like if you can be an athlete, for example, and you can learn how to sell merch and you can learn how to make like a really cool highlight video of yourself competing, and maybe learn how to turn that into an advertisement, then turn that into a product that you can sell, which gets people into a funnel, which gets them onto an email newsletter. And then you understand the whole game. Like you're going to win going forward. You're going to win big time compared to everyone else. And like you're saying, man, you're going to set yourself up for success long-term. It's not just jiu-jitsu guys, but just athletes in general need to learn how to do this. Like athletes in general need to learn the social media game and how to sell products and how to create their own products. I mean, dude, look at like what Joe Rogan just did. He just launched a CBD seltzer with a couple other influencers, for example. Like if you get a big enough audience, you can sell whatever freaking product you want. You can come up with a beverage product or a backpack. Like look at what Henry Gracie did. He came up with the quick flip, the hoodie that turns into the back flap, the back.
There's another one too, where it's like a thing for your neck when you're flying and it clips to the back of the chair. He's just a business mastermind now.
It's great. I love it. I love the combination. Like, what do you think that is, man? Like, what do you think it is about this that kind of draws people who are into jiu-jitsu into business and vice versa? Because I found a lot of business guys are starting to get into jiu-jitsu.
I think I'm going to explain this in the easiest way possible. In jiu-jitsu, the objective is the same as sales, right? Sales, the rule is ABC, always be closing. In jiu-jitsu, the rule is always be closing. Because we're hunting for submissions, we're hunting for sales, we're always on the pursuit, right, to get exactly the goal that we want. You know, simple, single objective goals that we constantly we make for ourselves. So I feel like that's why the crossover works. You know, I feel like in business, I'm like maybe a 1 or 2 stripe white belt. So I'm just continually asking questions and learning from my mistakes and continuing from there. That's like where I rank myself and where I am in that regards. And I just keep applying. I just keep applying for it. I learn from my mistakes. And that's pretty much that. I mean, like to be a good teacher, you have to be a good student too. That's just my opinion.
Totally, man. Like business and jiu-jitsu have this one thing in common. They've got a lot in common, but one of those things is that you got to always be a white belt in your mind. Like the moment that you know everything about jiu-jitsu, that's when you're going to go get your ass beat by someone. You know, that's when you're going to go up against head coach and he's going to get you in 30 seconds or something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like just when you think that you've got it all figured out, that's when coach shows like, oh, he hasn't even shown you this other side of his game yet.
Oh yeah.
And the same thing in business. Like the moment you think you're crushing it in business, that's when something falls apart and suddenly you're back to square zero. Or the moment you think that you have it all figured out and you're some hot shot because you finally made 6 figures or whatever, then you go to some networking event and everyone there is making 10 figures. And you're like, oh, like I'm nothing. You know, I know nothing about any of this stuff. And the thing that you understand about business too is the different levels of business require a completely different mindset. Like the startup mindset and the startup hustle is completely different than the hustle that begins like once you have the company established and you have to manage the team and other stuff. Like, and then there's another level that I've never even gotten to where you have like, you know, an executive team and they're managing people, you know, and it's like a corporation. Like every level of the game, from what I've heard from people who've been there, like requires you to basically go back to white belt all over again. Like as soon as you really make it in business and you've got a team, great, you got to be a white belt again and learn how to manage your team or else the whole thing is going to fall apart. And you don't know how to manage a team because you never have before, you know, like shit like that. That's been my experience in business. It's like,
that goes back to the fraternity, right? You manage the team then. So there's your experience.
It's true, man. Hey, I had one more question for you, man. So I know you're a teacher. I know you're obviously really passionate about helping other people and using this. Like, where do you feel jiu-jitsu could really help the world? Let's say hypothetically, we could get everyone in the world trained in jiu-jitsu at least one time. Like, what do you think that would do?
Honestly, I always put this into the perspective of like when I was bullied. Going back to the beginning of the conversation, but I had a rough time in my childhood, you know, and when people were to pick on me, pick on my brother, you know, things like that, you know, I think about like, I wish that version of me, that version of Mike had that jiu-jitsu confidence at that time. I wish that I had that ability to protect myself and I had that ability to stand up for myself, you know, in those situations. So I was thinking about like how my life could have been better. I can't change that. But you know, you bet your ass that I can change 50 other lives, 60 other lives, 70 other lives. The more I get into teaching kids jiu-jitsu, I realize that those kids might become the kids that get bullied. And it's my responsibility to make sure that they're confident and they can protect themselves. And sometimes when I question, like, you know, you're having a good class or you're having a shit class and you're questioning, why am I even doing this? Like what's the purpose of me coming out here? I already have a career. I'm a teacher. I teach all day. The bell rings at 8:30, right? I dismiss the kids at 3:10. Why am I hustling to go to Immortal? Why am I hustling to go to UFC gym to teach these kids? And then I think back at those dark times in my life where kids were harassing me, giving me a hard time. Like I couldn't go on the bus without fearing that I might get into a fight. I might get beat up. Why? Because I'm Korean or I'm Asian or my brother, he acts funny. He's socially awkward. So we're going to make fun of you for that. And that fucked me up as a kid, man. And I think about every single time, right, that I was in that situation. If I had that reservoir of strength to draw upon, if I had that little bit of jiu-jitsu to know to protect myself, that would pretty much have made my life so much different. And if I could just give that gift to all these kids that I teach, my life's complete.
That's beautiful, man.
And it goes full circle from the very beginning of the conversation, because about a couple months ago, I got a message in my inbox. It was from Coach Lodato. It was my wrestling coach that pretty much started this whole journey. And he messaged me. He goes, "I'm so proud of you. I love that you're working with the kids, and I love that you're carrying the torch. I want to come visit you." So the old man drove all the way over to Clifton, New Jersey. You know, he caught the end of my kids' practice, took class with me, right? I got to roll him 13 years after high school. And he told me exactly, how he felt about this whole thing. Like, I told him, like, dude, like, you pretty much guided my entire life here. My high school wrestling coach, he set him, Justin Altschul, Josh Yuri, shout out to you guys as well. They just really carved the path for me to walk on. They paved the path for me to walk on. And it's crazy. It's crazy, man. Like, it's just like from one event to the other, how it sort of, led up to this. And that was like really where I felt like a chapter in my life ended and I'm starting a new one, because I've sort of developed a sense of purpose, and it helped further my identity about what I'm supposed to do on this planet and why I'm here. Like, I don't really believe in like destiny. I'm not really a religious person at all, but like, I think about like, why am I on this planet? What am I supposed to do? What's my mission as a person, and it's like not just to give the community, but to give that confidence, to give that extra boost of motivation, and to give a persona, to some of these children that might be just lost, man. Like, I think that adolescence is such a weird fucking age in your life. And if we could just help these kids and guide them into the right path, like, it's funny. It's going to sound stupid, but like, some of these kids I teach, like, some of them are in middle school, and they'll ask me advice, like, what do I say to this girl? I remember a huge crush on her in my science class. And I'm like, all right, come take a seat with me, right? Listen, Coach Mike, might teach you jiu-jitsu, but I can help you out with some other shit too. But like, to me, that means the world, because it means they confide in me. You know what I'm saying? Like you wouldn't ask. I don't think you would ask your father that question. You might ask your older brother, how do I approach this girl I have a crush on? But they ask me. I'm their coach, and it's like, wow, I'm really that like older brother, like paternal, like male figure in this life, maybe a role model that they needed. And getting these emails or messages, or even talking to these kids' parents at Naga, when I get them on the top of the podium, and their parents are like, "Hey, we really owe you this. Like, my child is completely different since he joined your program. He's confident. The way he carries himself is completely different. And we just want to say thank you for all you've done for him." Like, to me, that means everything.
Yeah.
That's what jiu-jitsu is to me.
Man, that's so powerful. Dude, you're a freaking warrior. Like, you're you're what we need more of in this world. Protector.
I appreciate that. And like, that's why when I saw the topic of like mental health, I'm like, oh, dude, I got this. I got notes. You know what I mean? Like, I got that.
Dude. Fuck yeah. Like, the other thing too, man, like, I'm autistic, so I just really appreciate that it's all got started because you were defending your autistic brother. I mean, that's pretty freaking cool, man. So,
yeah.
I mean, people like you, bro. For real.
I feel like I mean, shout out to my brother. I feel like that if he was listening to this, he'd be like, what the fuck? You didn't defend me, blah 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 blah. But he was my older brother. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta understand, man. People were fucked up back then, man. Like I try to tell my kids now in the classroom and on the mats, like especially about that. You have to be aware about like about not everyone might be worried, but a lot of people have pain beyond their eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true.
So
It's true.
don't fuck with someone if you think it's like just funny, especially if you don't know them, because you don't know what they're going through, and you don't know the kind of struggles that they might be having. And especially back then, man, no one really had a good understanding of what autism was, you know?
Right.
So just trying to, even when we're talking about like how hard it is to find your identity as a teen, as an adolescent back then, I couldn't really imagine how hard it was for my brother to figure that out. Or maybe when you were younger as well, you know, with autism, that must have been incredibly difficult.
Yeah. It was weird. Well, I was homeschooled, so I had kind of a different experience because I got diagnosed later in life when I kind of joined the world, if that makes sense. Because I
don't know too much about your background here, but okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it was weird. But yeah, I felt pretty weird growing up the whole time, to say the least, and all the time. But now I've just come to realize, oh, that's me. You know, it's what I'm here to. That's what I'm here to represent in the world. But I guess anyway, what I wanted to talk about last, man, is just, let's say there's someone listening to this and they're new on their journey, or maybe they haven't even started yet. Maybe there's someone listening who's like a one stripe white belt. Maybe they just started training. Like, what words of wisdom would you give to that person, or like just anything that you would share with them to start them off?
There's a lot of like tacky lines that I can use, but that doesn't suffice here. My best advice that I could give is don't plan jiu-jitsu around your day. Plan your day around jiu-jitsu.
That's brilliant.
I want you to think about that.
That's brilliant, man. That should go on a t-shirt. You're talking about making t-shirts? That could go on a t-shirt, bro. For real.
That's what I tell white belts at my academy. That's what I tell the kids.
No, it's true.
Don't plan jiu-jitsu around your day. Plan your day around jiu-jitsu. And that's when everything sort of falls together.
Yeah, everything, man. Like your nutrition, your sleep, your workout, you know, getting to class early or as early as you can, everything.
Yeah, man. But like, even so, like, the thing I like about where I'm at right now at Immortals is that everything's really strict, right? Like, if you're a competitor and you're not hitting 5 training sessions minimum a week, you're not competing under our brand. Like, that's not happening, right? Conditioning is super important. What do you call it? After practice, if we have a tournament coming up, you best believe we're on the assault bike. You know, I'm really, really, really into the discipline of it, and just going back to how it is, man. Like, I feel more like me when I'm on the mat than when I'm off the mat. When I'm off the mat, I feel like Michael Yim as a person is on the mat. Michael Yim playing teacher is off the mat. Michael Yim being a normal civilian at a restaurant is me playing a normal civilian out of the restaurant. I feel more like me when I'm in combat.
Isn't that interesting? I think it speaks to what we were talking about earlier, about this kind of evolutionary drive that's in people like us. And one of my mentors is a guy named Alex Sharfin, and he's got a theory called the evolutionary hunter, which is this idea that a lot of people who get like diagnosed with these different disorders or different labels or whatever, people just who feel kind of weird in life but get drawn to maybe entrepreneurship or something like that. His theory is that a lot of us are kind of the genetic descendants of the warriors who used to protect the tribe, who no longer really are needed to protect the tribe. I mean, unless you're in the military, obviously. But even then, I mean, the military doesn't necessarily train constantly unless you're like in the special forces. You know, as I was in the Army for 6 years, and like, you know, if you're not in the special forces or the infantry, the Army can be a lot like a regular desk job. So there's not really a place for people like us who maybe want to be in combat constantly, because that's what feels normal. You know, people like us back in the day, we used to want to be going out hunting the woolly mammoth or trying to bring back some giant sloth that we killed for the whole tribe. And without that, we feel like something inside of us is dying, because with us, we either have to be on the hunt or we feel like we're going to starve, basically.
Yeah.
We tie hunting with survival, basically.
Yeah. And, you know, just piggybacking off that, fast forward centuries after what you're talking about, I've always asked my parents this because I was like, they thought it was hilarious that my coach came up with the nickname, the Korean Executioner. It's not, I didn't come up with it. I personally thought it's a terrible nickname, and it just stuck. Everyone in the school called me the Executioner. It's over. So I just went with it.
Well, I can understand now that I've gotten to know you a little bit, like, because you seem just like the nicest guy on planet Earth. But yeah, I love the Executioner. I mean, you're the furthest thing from an executioner that I would imagine. But I bet if we were to roll or compete, I bet I would find out.
Yeah. I compete a lot, actually. I had a really good year last year in competition, but I definitely want to repeat that this year. I was like a match away from placing at IBJJF Worlds No Gi, and that flight home from California really, really, really left a bad taste in my mouth. So I have a big chip on my shoulder. I'm really trying to prove something this year.
Good, man. Well, excited to watch you, man. This is awesome.
I want to really talk about this at the end.
Yeah, sure. We'll wrap it up. Whatever that is. Let's talk.
So you were talking about like how we have this naturally ingrained part in our brains, deep back where we're these hunters. We're supposed to have these, that feeling of hunting, and that was our means of survival. And that's where I talked to my parents about like the Korean Executioner, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, so Mom, Dad, how many martial artists were in our family line? Like, I've always wanted to know that. And my dad really had to think about that. So just, general people, even like within my generation, I have two cousins. One of them was like I think like an Illinois, like wrestler, right? He's a purple belt under John Danaher. And I have another cousin, right, who's a brown belt, I believe under Damian Maya. So like a lot of people in my family are martial artists. And then we go generations before that, right? We have black belts in Judo within my family. So going back to the lineage, because we know that Jiu-Jitsu is from Japan, right? I have ancestors and I have people that studied the sport long before my parents and my grandparents were even alive. So to me, it makes me feel like I was born to do this. I was supposed to do this.
Yeah. No, I believe it, man.
I have to find it.
This is getting into spirituality and consciousness and stuff like that. But I've got another podcast I host called Beyond Homo Sapien, which is more about that. But we talk about ancestral karma. It's this idea that we're really trying to clear the energy from our past lineage, almost like your family lineage is here for some sort of a spiritual purpose. And if you don't complete that, then it gets passed on to your kin, gets passed on. So that mission, whatever it is, that family thing that your family's here to do might be very...
yeah, Paul, you froze. I couldn't hear what you were saying.
Oh, man.
Because I was so fascinated about what you were going to say.
I'll repeat it. I was saying there's this idea of kind of ancestral karma, which is this idea that basically your family or your family lineage is here for some purpose, some spiritual quest of some sort. And if it's not completed, then it gets passed on to the next generation. And, it's this idea that, and a lot of people think, there's this whole talk of the age of Aquarius and all this other nonsense. And but a lot of people think that the people who are alive today, our job is to almost like tie up the family karma so that we can then evolve and move on to the next cycle of growth, which is why, I'm not saying this is 100% true, but it is a theory.
I think it's fascinating.
It is a theory. And it would make a lot of sense to me. Like, let's say that that's true, would sound like your family would have something to do with the martial arts. Like almost like that is the mission of not just you, but your whole family karma is tied up in something.
Well, I actually asked my parents about that. Like what did the ancient Yims do? Like what were we known for? And apparently we were scholars of the royal family. So we were teachers and people that studied within that. So I followed the path I was supposed to. I'm like a teacher. I'm like a martial artist. So like I kind of followed what I was supposed to do. Everything was written. My parents don't even teach. They don't even do that. I think my dad was like a purple belt in Hapkido. Like he stopped a while ago. He did it because of military training. In Korea, you have to serve.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting to me, like, because you see these sorts of almost trends that come up in families, and yeah, I don't know, not to take us down a spiritual matrix rabbit hole, but I think about this stuff a lot.
Yeah, for sure, man. But like, I just think it's funny how it all kind of, like just one little like situation where I had to use my instincts to fight, and it just took me down this path of a warrior where I learned wrestling, and then I got a little off track, and then eventually I felt incomplete, and I started feeling complete and more myself when I got back into grappling. I got back into martial arts, and that's where I am now. And now I'm the executioner. You know what I'm saying?
Man, well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Michael. This has been an amazing conversation. Is there?
I didn't want to really be boring, man. I didn't want to just give you the same cookie cutter, like, yo, jujitsu is good for you. It makes you happier. Jujitsu, it really helps you with your psyche. It may help you with your ego. It helps you. I didn't want to go into that.
Well, good. Me neither. But dude, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. And just to wrap this up, is there anything that you want to share with us? Like, where can people find you if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
Follow me on Instagram at Korean Executioner. Follow my gym, Immortals Jiu-Jitsu. All right. Come check out immortalsjiu-jitsu.com. We have open mats on Sundays, right? Open to all affiliates at 2 p.m. Come roll with me. Come roll with my coach. Come roll with my teammates. We're an awesome gym. We're winning a lot this year, competition-wise. We're 53. I think it's like 55-3. We're crushing it. So I want to keep that up. I want to, invite the community to come check out the gym, right? My coach is the Sultan of Strangles. You can follow him at Cool Rack. And that's pretty much it, man.
I love it, man. Yeah, I want to come train with you guys sometimes. I started following Mike on Instagram after Who's Next. So I've been following the Immortals journey ever since.
Ever since that stupid show, every tournament we go to, yo, it's the Sultan of Strangles. Can you take a picture of us? Oh, he's gonna do the Camel Crusher. I don't know how many tournaments I've been to where people have asked him, yo, can you put me in the Camel Crusher? I want to see if it works.
Love it.
Every freaking tournament.
Does it work?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I love it, man. I can't wait. I'm gonna have to come train with you guys sometimes, but
anytime, man.
a great chat. I really appreciate it, man.
All right, man.